Hello and welcome to this Burn the Burnout mini-series where I'm going to take you through all 4 parts of my burn framework that will hopefully help you burn the burnout for good. But before we get into any of that, let me briefly explain who I am and why I came up with this framework. Because I've actually been talking about burnout since 2020, so 6 years now. And it's because I suffered a really bad burnout myself in my mid to late 20s. I was running an international marketing agency. I had a lot of staff. I'd been given a scholarship by Warwick Business School to study a master's in business, despite having 0 previous qualifications. And so I was running this business, I was studying for a master's, and of course I burnt out quite spectacularly in London one week. Completely exhausted, could not move, had to get a taxi back from London to my home in Kent because I physically could not even walk to the train station. So this was kind of the explosion of burnout, and it was the end of that and the beginning of a recovery process. And as I was going through that recovery process, I was learning absolutely everything I could about different types of stress management, because I thought if I knew everything about stress management, then I would never be stressed and I'd never burn out again. So I closed my business down. I set up the Anti-Burnout Club in January 2021, and I brought together loads of different types of modalities, loads of different practitioners and therapists to talk about different types of stress management, or to do yoga and meditation, all of that kind of lovely stuff. The problem was that when I had my daughter in November 2023, no amount of stress management technique was going to get me through that complete and utter life change of becoming a parent, trying to run a business, do all of these things. And so inevitably I burnt out a second time. And I was like, I'm Anti-Burnout Bex. How on earth am I burning out again? This is not possible. Like, I cannot, hand on heart, say that I am a burnout expert that is going through burnout a second time. So I took a huge step back from the Anti-Burnout Club. I kind of put it all on hold, and I spent a year being a mum and learning everything I possibly could about burnout, not stress management. So the problem that I'd faced was that I knew everything about stress management. I knew all of the different stress management techniques, but burnout and stress are 2 very different things. And whilst we'll dig into the differences between them and how, of course, too much stress leads to burnout, you cannot out burnout yourself with a load of yoga and meditation. It is just not possible. So I did loads of research. I read all the papers. I really started to understand what the causes of burnout are. And it goes far beyond just being stressed at work or just being stressed as a parent. There are so many underlying things that cause burnout. And it's a bit like Shrek and his onion, right? You've got to peel back the layers and truly understand what's going on underneath before you can try and fix it. So that's what led to me creating the Burn framework. And I've spent the last 1.5 years now going into workplaces, going to events, talking about this framework, living it with people, and seeing how people actually integrate it into their lives. So in this first video, I'm just going to take you through the 4 elements of the framework, and then I will have videos on each part of the framework so you can dig into them a little bit more. Burn stands for be aware, unlearn, rebuild, and now take action. Some people say I shoehorned the now in to make burn work, but there is a very important reason that now is there. So let's go through them very quickly one by one. B for be aware is not just being aware of the signs and symptoms of burnout, right? We can talk about that till the cows come home. And a lot of people like knowing the signs and symptoms. They can tick it off a list, but then they don't really do anything with them. So when I talk about being aware, I'm talking about being really self-aware, really understanding how we feel, what's on our plate, what we need to clear off our plate, what our stresses are, what tips us over the edge. So becoming super self-aware is the first kind of stage, so that when you get those little whispers of burnout, that little like twittering in your ear that something's not quite right, you know what to do about it. The next part of the framework is my absolute favorite. And it was this huge realization for me after my second burnout was that I was going to keep going through burnout cycles until I started to unlearn the things that were keeping me there in the first place. And really what we're talking about are old and outdated values and beliefs that we've picked up throughout our lives from childhood, from parents, teachers, old bosses, society, social media, some of these values and beliefs that just aren't doing us any favors. And once we've started to unlearn them, which is a process, by the way, it's going to be a longer process, it's not a quick fix, we can then start to rebuild. And basically what we're talking about here is imagining that you get to start again and saying, well, what are my values? What are my beliefs? What are the things that I care about? How do I want to be as a person? And rewriting the rules, rebuilding from there. And then finally, we have now take action. And this is for my people who like to read all of the self-help books, or shelf-help books as we call them here, and do all of the video lessons and all of that kind of stuff, but then just kind of sit in it, right? And struggle a little bit to actually take action. Now, there is nothing wrong with that, particularly when you're in the middle of burnout. But I want this to be practical. I want these to be things that you can actually take into your life, embed into your life, and feel like they're making a difference. So now take action is all about how we bring this all together and how we actually start to live our new life with our values and our beliefs and everything that we've learned along the way. So consider the first 3 parts of the framework as more of a learning process, and then the last part as the action process, which is the most important if we're honest. And what we do in that part of the framework is ensure that we can take action, even if it is the smallest, tiniest bit of action, particularly when we're already burnt out, particularly when we're in that place. How can we move forward little bits at a time? And that is it. That is the framework. It seems very simple when I say it all out loud, but of course there's much more to it. And that's why I'm going to do a video for each of the different elements in turn, starting with Be Aware, where we'll look at firstly the signs and symptoms, because I know everybody loves hearing about them, but also how we can think about our own stressors, how we can become more self-aware and understand what's on our plate and how we can start to clear it. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.